Okay. And so, welcome to the San Diego Pain and Trauma Institute's lecture on the intersection of plant medicine and ecotherapy as a botanical informed approach. And so, before we fully dive in, I want to give you a moment to sit back and connect with nature. And so, actually, if you want to, you can actually stand up and take a moment to walk around your space. Maybe this is a space that you're in every day, seeing clients, doing work on the Zooms. And so give yourself an opportunity just to walk around. Maybe going clockwise first, feeling your feet come in contact with the floor underneath you. Maybe it's cool or warm, soft or hard. As you walk through your space, noticing what you smell. Inhaling in, noticing the temperature of the air as it comes into your body. And with your exhale, noticing your body relaxing, your shoulders coming down, the pressure of your foot into the floor. And now maybe going counterclockwise around your space, starting to notice the colors, the shapes, the textures, as if walking through this space with brand new eyes, like a child that's never been here before. Noticing the light and the shadows and how they interact with each other. And see as you're moving through your space if you can find something that either is of nature or reminds you of nature. And I invite you to hold it in your hand, if that's possible, and take a moment to explore it with those childlike eyes. Noticing its weight, its texture, its temperature. Maybe it has a smell to it. Maybe even there's a taste to it. Children always put things in their mouth as using all their senses to really understand and explore something with new eyes. And so coming back to your seat, holding this object and noticing it, welcoming nature into these next 3 hours together. We'll be diving into coming into a deeper understanding of chronic pain and why our individual bodies and collective bodies experience chronic pain, and how ecotherapy and its different forms, from plant medicine to surfing, are key in healing and transforming us from surviving bodies into thriving bodies. And so let this little tiny piece of nature connect you to your own relationship with nature. What are your favorite ways of accessing nature, experiencing nature? What does nature gift you or bring you? I'm going to we'll take like 3 minutes here just to either think and reflect or write of what has nature gifted you? When you're in your favorite nature spaces, what do you feel in your body? What moves in your brain and your mind? When you're in your nature space, what is your heart whispering to you? Or maybe she's singing to you. And then pausing wherever you're at with your pen or in your mind's journal, and take a moment to reread what you have in front of you. Maybe looking at or holding that piece of nature in your hand. We'll do 3 breaths together, just welcoming us in exactly where we're at. We're each here because we've each had our own connections with nature, and we're curious and excited, or curious again to dive in deeper into understanding why ecotherapy, plant medicine, surf therapy, nature is key in our healing process and transformation process. And so sitting back, feeling this space support you. And if it's not feeling supported, maybe move your body, stand up, lay down, do what you need to do to feel supported and present and alive in this moment. And we'll inhale in through our nose, holding at the top, and then exhale, releasing. Inhaling in, allowing your body to take up a little bit more space, feeling the oxygen expand you. And then exhaling, feeling your shoulders drop down, gravity pulling you into this present moment. And then final inhale, allowing your body to maybe take up space beyond the Zoom screen, maybe in front of you, above you, behind you. And exhaling, bringing it down and around into that comfort hold. Giving yourself a little squeeze. Thanking yourself for showing up today, for being nature, and seeing what she can teach us today.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. That's a good start. So we came up with this talk. In the last few years, I've been exploring surf therapy with Natalie and learning about nature and just history. And I also came into contact with Dr. Michelle Sexton, who is an internationally known scientist who specializes in the role of plants in medicine, cannabis in particular. She is an adjunct professor at UCSD Pain Department. And then Natalie Small, who is the founder and creator of Groundswell, which has its surf therapy program rooted in somatic, mindful, and play. And she will be talking much more about that. So next slide. Just, the landing page. So just an introduction, ecotherapy is the process of healing with nature and looking at our relationships with the earth. And the item that I picked was a crystal, it's called selenite. And I don't know how many years old this is, but it's probably billions of years old, probably 1.5 billion. And I'm telling you this because we want to start framing this. Chronic illness, chronic pain is an epidemic, and why? Why are people getting sick? And what I want to get across to you in this first part is just how little time we've had to evolve into what we are dealing with. And it's really hard to picture. So I'm going to give a good go at that and see if we can't do it. You can go ahead. I'll introduce myself. I'm the founder and clinical of Pain Trauma Institute. I research chronic pain, grief, trauma through ecotherapy, through plant therapy. I'm a grief counselor, and I'm a surf therapy facilitator and education for doctors to learn about trauma. And so I founded this institute to communicate to the world and mostly to physicians that, trauma is underlying most of our diseases and they don't know much about it. So that's kind of our overall mission at PTI, is to get doctors and therapists in the same page. So they don't want me to put this slide in, but I want to put this in. This continent, 300 million years ago, this is called Pangea. This is where we had one large landmass and one huge ocean. And I love this because it shows the different countries. And so when you are maybe in Scotland, and there's a formation there that you've actually seen in New Jersey, let's say, there's a reason, because these areas split apart. And what also we look at is, why are we talking about plants? I have this graphic up now, and I'll go through it more later. But we are from the same ancestor, and we diverged with plants about 6 billion years ago. So we've come out of the same place, and we share DNA. And mushrooms are the autoimmune systems of plants, just as we have autoimmune systems. Next. So I showed you that large continent, and now bringing you back here to the past 120,000 years or so. These last two panels, this one represents the last ice age, which I'm sure you've all heard of. That's where we're finding humans from 5 million years ago in caves. We're finding our record. These are where we're getting our records of climate change, is that we can see these glaciation periods. And this just happens to be the last one. And this last one was 30,000 years ago. So we were there. We were on Earth for that time. We actually came about 200,000 years ago as humans. But before that, there were hominids that go back much further. But essentially what separates humans from, I know it's a little complicated, these are just different forms of humans, like Neanderthal is one, like why are we here, not Neanderthals? And the reason is we had a cultural linguistic revolution 70,000 years ago where man was actually able to imagine. He was able to look beyond his own thoughts or her own thoughts. And the other thing that happened is they learned of death. They were able to learn that, oh, I'm going to die someday, but yet still going about their normal days, not in terror of dying. And we do the same thing. And after this revolution, we start to see in the record how important death was for these old civilizations. Like the pyramids are 3,400 BC, and that represents just a small part of history. But the pyramid is essentially a tomb, as you know. And so again, these humans, hunter-gatherers through all time, have been honoring death. Do animals know they're going to die? We don't know that, but we're pretty sure they don't. They do grieve, but we're pretty sure they don't know that they're going to die. Next. So in the beginning, there was land. We related to plants. We used plants. Native populations worked with nature. They did not assume it was something to conquer. They assumed it was something to honor. And in the last 2,000 years, or 12,000 years, we have decided, no, we're going to dominate. It's our manifest destiny to go and claim land. This is what we're going to do. We're going to use all the resources we can, and we're going to keep on living and keep on developing. And what this has resulted in is a lot of illness, because we are not living in nature as we are supposed to do. Okay, back to the clock. Trying to represent how small a fraction our time is on Earth is really difficult. So my daughter told me, well, what about this? And it's just a clock representing Earth and Earth's time, from the beginning to the origin of life, which will be bacteria, etc. Then we get to the oldest fossils, like trilobites. I'm saying that for Natalie. We come up around, you can see just within here, we don't have a whole lot of time compared to all this time. And the dinosaurs were there when there was that big continent. And that's why you can find dinosaur and archaeological things all over the world, because we were all connected. Shortly thereafter became mammals. That's 11 minutes and 39 seconds out of 12. And then we come in at 11 minutes, 58 seconds. And we go from hunter-gatherer abruptly into what's called the agricultural revolution, where we learned how to basically use nature to our advantage, how to plant wheat, how to make food in different places. We started to settle, and that was to the detriment of humanity, because the more we settled, the more nature we conquered, the less lifestyle or happiness we could have seemed to be before that. And so the agricultural revolution was 12,000 years ago. It was huge. We went down to other foods. We got less healthy. And then we go to post-agricultural. After agriculture, we represent 4.62 seconds of this clock, or when humans entered. That's 4 seconds. And if you go even further, there were 3 industrial revolutions. And this last one, the first one was electricity and steam. The first one was steam, and the second one was gas and coal. And the third revolution started in 1969, and we changed it to the fourth, somewhere in between there. That's a little complicated to tell you. But why 1969 did this next step happen? Well, man went to Earth, to moon, sorry. He went to the moon, and he looked back, and he saw the Earth as a planet. Nobody had seen these images before that. Nobody had ever seen it. Maybe they saw a few shots, but they never saw it. And it changed humanity. And we have nuclear energy and digital revolution. And right now, in the last 70 years, our existence on this planet is 0.021 seconds. And this particular one that we're living in right now, that doesn't even register on our scale. We are not prepared. We have never gone through either a warming or such a globalization and technical place that, land has become far away as humans have moved into more urban settings, which happened when we started to plant and we started to have community and we started to worry about death and talk about death. We have no historical parallel. And so it's a little scary right now. Go ahead. So what are we left with? I mean, if you looked at that picture, you saw a smoggy LA. We're left with an environment that is polluted, that we cannot get to nature, especially if we're in poverty. Those neighborhoods have less plants, whereas more upper class people tend to live where they have a vista or a landscape. So we're talking about chronic disease, autoimmune disease, which isn't even on here, but chronic illness is probably the largest cost we have to society. In fact, we know it does. There are 50 million Americans right now who are suffering from a disease. Take each one of those people and add on a family member, another family member, add on a boss and a job. It's the leading cause of death and disability, and it's also the leading cause of absenteeism from work. So it's affecting us on a societal level. Next. So why are we talking about ecotherapy? Why are we so interested in the land right now? It really stems from that time in 1969 when we saw the Earth as a planet we needed to take care of. And yet we didn't take care of it. But it was born out of environmental revolutions as they started to realize we need to do this, we need to curb gas emissions. As soon as they realized all of that, they started to use the land, and all of us are using nature in our therapy. We're probably recommending to our patients to go outside, go for a run, go get some social support, go climb up a mountain and look below you and see how insignificant your problems may be. And that gives us a whole other view to go through. And you're already doing it, and we already intuitively know that when we go out into nature, we feel better. Now, some people may have bad experiences in nature, but in general, our species is meant to be with nature. We live so similarly to the plants, we are connected to the plants. And that's why I'm introducing Michelle to talk about plant medicine in general. She's an expert international speaker, I've told you before. And what she's going to do is first talk about the toxic stress of living right now in modern history. It has caused an underlying trauma and pain, and something that we are taking on every day, especially as life goes on right now. And
Okay, does that look correct to everyone? This is the correct screen. Can anyone confirm?
Yes.
yes, sorry. Too busy trying to find my cursor.
Well, thanks for the introduction. Just want to dive a little bit deeper into the biological piece of what humankind is going through and the impacts of adverse childhood experiences and resulting toxic stress from that. But even without adverse childhood experiences, which you'll see most people have, just the toxic stress of living in our society today. So we're going to talk about the role of nature and plants in healing us and helping us to be whole. So my background was as an herbalist, and this is the book that brought me to midwifery, spiritual midwifery. It was published in 1978 by Ina May Gaskin, who is the mother of modern midwifery. And so kind of following this whole age that Tracy's talking about, that began when we saw our planet from a distance. And then we're going to also later be talking about the psychedelic revolution, which was sort of a precursor to the psychedelic therapy that we're going to discuss. So I started as a midwife and then went to naturopathic medical school. And just briefly, this is what we consider our therapeutic order, that when we see a person, the first thing that we do is try to get the big picture of all of their systems and all of the inputs into health, and to first remove obstacles to health. And you can see that up at the top of this intervention ladder are the things that many people encounter, maybe on, an initial visit to a doctor, to treat symptoms rather than try to get to the underlying cause. So these are our naturopathic principles. So you can see the healing power of nature, identify and treat the cause, first do no harm, doctor as teacher, treating the whole person, and prevention. So in talking or thinking about evolution on the planet, living beings we're not in charge of who we become, what we are. The environment totally is shaping us. We all have the same basic needs, and yet how those needs get met, it can be very different for every individual. So, for instance, with stress, we know that low amounts of stress are actually good for us, that it stimulates a rise in our biology, a rise to meet the situation. And we need that in times. But the problem becomes when the stress becomes too high and it's overwhelming our systems. This is a concept that's known as hormesis, or favorable responses to a low dose, but high dose being toxic. So based on these inputs and things that we get exposed to, we habituate to our environments. Plants do this really quickly, and we are not as fast at adapting as plants are, but we do adapt. So what is toxic stress? This is high-level stress that impacts us over time and ends up having a negative effect. And one way that it has a negative effect is that it actually impairs our ability to adequately and in a healthy way respond to stress. So this box here is listing the top 10, or what we sometimes refer to as the capital T traumas that children may have. And this is training. Adverse childhood experience training is available for free. The state of California offers it. So this isn't intended to be specific training on adverse childhood experiences, but to illustrate the role of these experiences in health, not only as a child, but carried into adulthood. So when walking through these adverse childhood experiences with patients, you'll find that they may often try to minimize their experience. But sometimes in the process of asking about each of these individual things, they will open up and tell something that maybe isn't exactly this, but something similar. And what these are now recognized as are the lowercase t trauma, or beyond the original 10 ACEs. And so, delving into what people experienced is really important for understanding how this affected them as a child. So we know that it can delay development, participate in remodeling of the brain, or how brain neural networks are made, leading to health problems and even early death. And so what people need is to rebuild this resilience, because it was basically impaired in childhood. And so there's all of these different aspects involved in building resilience, and that's part of what we're going to talk more about today. So we know that if after you walk the patient through the ACEs, people with greater than 4 ACEs are at very high risk for chronic disease in adulthood. So 67% of the population have at least one. 16%, and this number may be going higher as more and more people are getting screened, have 4 or more types of ACEs. So this is important for doctors to know, and this is a place where therapists can really come in and educate patients about this, and patients can go and educate doctors, because this impacts their physical health, their mental health, behaviors, and even socioeconomic health. So people with these adverse childhood experiences are less likely to get education, have health insurance, and be unemployed. We also know that ACEs are associated with chronic PTSD, bipolar disorder diagnoses, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and other things that we'll talk about more. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into these impacts of toxic stress on the body-mind. And I like to think of it as the body-mind because there's really no separation. There was this rise of what we call mind-body medicine, but the body-mind are not separated. And the brain specifically, it's our electrical network, and it's driving every biological process in our body. So we know that in the brain, there are, if you know anything about networks, the big circles are usually called nodes, and those nodes have connections out. And in the brain, we have individual anatomical pieces of the brain, such as the amygdala or the hippocampus. And those are collections of these cell bodies of nerves, and the axon from the nerve goes out and connects to another node. So we know that early life adversity has effects on how these networks are formed. This is neurobiological development, functional alterations in how the brain is making connections. And this includes emotional circuitry and leading people to be more vulnerable for developing depression later in life. So we know that ACEs and dis-ease are connected. Sometimes these can be what we might consider invisible illnesses. These are predominantly in women, such as interstitial cystitis, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, bipolar disorder, autoimmunity, chronic viral diseases. And this can be measured using inflammatory markers in the blood, fibromyalgia, pelvic inflammatory disease. So when you're seeing a client that has any of these things, it should be a red flag that there's something underlying why they have these diseases. This is a combination of environment that we already talked about, the childhood environment, how the neurobiology was directed, and the inherited genetics. So as I was saying, plants adapt really quickly. People adapt usually over generations. So even if our mother was under extreme stress when pregnant with us, those genetics and how those genetics are expressed are passed down to the child. So this is something else to be vigilant for when working with young women. Signs of maternal stress, because the mother's stress is going to determine the offspring's stress resilience. So the mother may be actually under physical stress, such as not enough food, not a safe place to live, relationship that's unsafe, lack of social support. And these things are going to make her more hypervigilant for stress. And these stress hormones in her body are passed on to the child already in the womb. So this impaired brain development is beginning in the womb. And we know that it leads to delayed cognitive and motor development and impaired stress resilience in the child. So I find that patients often find it really fascinating to then talk about, do you know anything about what your mother was going through when she was pregnant with you? And that you can just see a light come on as people understand these connections. So what is stress resilience? It's the ability to easily adapt to change, really, mentally, emotionally, and physically, especially in a time of a crisis, and then come back down to pre-crisis mode. So we know that the body has to rise, but then it should come back into homeostasis. So when a person is not having good stress resilience over time, this is associated with behavioral health issues such as drug use or abuse, overuse, risk-taking, poor mental health, violence to self or others. And along with this, generalized inflammation in the body, disruption between the body-mind, including the gut and brain axis. And the overall effect of inflammation in the body is also neuroinflammation or inflammation in the brain. And inflammation in the brain is closely connected with depression and anxiety. So I want to talk briefly about the endocannabinoid system. This is a complete biological system that goes all the way back to what we call archaebacteria. And Tracy told me yesterday how far back that was, and I already forgot, but it was a long time
billion.
ago. 25 billion?
2.5 billion.
2.5 billion.
Yes.
So the beginnings of this system go way back to bacteria. We've inherited it as evolution occurred, and it's been described as a system to provide that we eat, sleep, relax, protect, and forget. So the system is important to think about because it's sort of like the relay system for all other systems. It's a system that sends messages, and it's like a negative feedback, like you adjust your thermometer, and when the room is 70 degrees, the heater cuts off. And that's an illustration of how the endocannabinoid system is working. And so there's a lot of things we can do to tone our endocannabinoid systems. Besides using cannabis, cannabis is a hack. So having positive social connections, playing, moderate exercise, there are foods that have cannabinoids that are toning our cannabinoid system. We have plasticizers and chemicals that can disrupt the system and other endocrine systems. There are specific botanical medicines, practices, just such as deep breathing, yoga, surfing, and skin-to-skin contact are all things that feed into this system to help us build our homeostasis and our stress resilience. So we might have all had an experience that kind of feels like that wave crashing into us. And we all will have different triggers. And when the wave crashes over, it may take us and jumble us around and tumble us around. I call it the washing machine effect when I'm surfing. You don't know if you're going to be able to get up for air. And this is what we have to think about our patients going through. You know, here's these two surfers, they got through it and they're still paddling out, but somebody else might still be down here under the water or paddling in saying, I'm ready to quit. And often after an experience like this, the trigger, you know, there's a lot of anxiety that's in that trigger, and then afterward, a depression. So this is all chemical in the body. So what can we do to help our clients and patients build resilience so that they can bounce back easier from difficulties and stress? Helping them to have social and emotional competence by helping them develop skills, understand what self-regulation is. This emotional awareness and somatic awareness is very essential. All kinds of therapy to help them learn how to take care of themselves, solve problems, pet therapy if they don't have anybody to have skin-to-skin contact with. What we're primarily talking about today is nature, connecting with nature and how that intersects with our healing. And then support services. So we can't heal a person on our own. It takes a community. And so becoming aware of who are these people and support services near you, and then that you can develop a network with, including integrative doctors like naturopathic doctors or other doctors trained in ACEs and in trauma-informed care, nutritionists, body workers, people who teach meditation, getting people involved in exercise. And these are all components of helping these clients build what we call interoception, or the ability to read their body signals. Sometimes these patients are very cut off from their own bodies. Another thing that you might see in this patient population is fear of going to doctors. They may be very adamant about treating themselves and taking advice from people who aren't doctors, and not really getting medical care that they need. So trauma-informed care involves acknowledging that trauma impacts everyone across the lifespan, and that includes us as caregivers and everyone that works in our offices. It includes acknowledging that both mental, behavioral health, and the body and systemic inflammation need to be treated. So everyone affiliated with the clinic being trained in this can be a great way to build your clientele and build on what you're doing and offer patients many, many different aspects to address their healing. So you can't do it alone. You need to find, there are integrative nutritionists, but people who are going to really have the time to sit down and go through the diet. There's something called the Dietary Inflammatory Index that gives a nice, clear picture of what they're eating and how inflammatory that diet is. Sleep is a very foundational piece that sometimes gets overlooked or undertreated. I had a patient the other day, 20 years old. She can't fall asleep, and then she has very fragmented sleep across the night. She feels fatigued. So she's seen a sleep specialist. She's going to have a sleep study. And in the end, all that really will happen for this person is she'll get prescribed a drug. So there are other things that you probably are aware of, sleep behavior therapy. And then there are natural supplements and many other ways to address sleep, because sleep is a time when our body's healing. And if people are not sleeping well, it's promoting inflammation in the body. Teaching people to relax can be really hard. It's really easy to say, take some time to relax. But when people are in this heightened state, they don't even notice, or they don't even know yet that anxiety isn't a normal state. Anxiety feels so normal that, we're going to go out and create that anxiety just to feel normal. So to get to that point is a great threshold for healing, when somebody realizes that how they feel isn't the normal way to feel. And so then, referring for training in this, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. And then, the body keeps the score, and trauma stored in the body needs to be released. We need our bodies to forget. And so connecting with body workers and somatic therapists and ecotherapy as one form of that. So what I'm, hoping the big picture is that the whole person needs to be treated, and addressing what I consider to be systems biology. And I use the endocannabinoid paradigm of eat, sleep, relax, protect, and forget to evaluate the whole person. But ultimately, this inflammation that underlies, or as a result of toxic stress and trauma, it has to be physically addressed. Of course, addressing stress resilience, building stress resilience is a big piece of that picture. but often patients are going to need nice botanical anti-inflammatories and fully understanding the impacts of these experiences and impaired stress resilience on their development of autoimmunity, cancer, bone disease, chronic pain, understanding their family health history. What are the risk factors carried through the family and the genetics, and doing everything that we can to protect healthy aging. And so in the next part, we're going to go more deeply into those botanicals and specific things to inform you about, to help bring your clients into wholeness and a natural wholeness, using nature to get there. So these are just some resources. The scale of body connection, I really love it because it's a great measurement that you can use, a tool you can use to see where the client is with their interoception. And then you can use it over time as they incorporate these tools so that they can see their progress and you can measure it as well. So we'll make these resources available. I think Shane's compiling all the resources, so.
Thanks, Michelle. We're gonna just briefly take a step back again to land you into our time. Michelle's just described what's happening to individuals and their exposure to disease, but it's a much bigger societal issue. So I don't know if you guys have heard, but there were 4 industrial revolutions. The first one was in 1765, and that is when the steam engine was developed from coal. When that steam engine was developed, trains started to go across America and across everywhere, and a huge exodus of people took these trains. These trains were actually, the companies were fought over. It was a whole issue. There's some good shows about that. Then 1870, we have gas and electricity. So now we're all at light, and we're at night, we can light it up with more than a candle. And light on its own, out of everything we're talking about, is one of the most important, if not the most important. We need to get outside and see light, and some people have to get boxes to look at to get that experience. But to go outside is to take yourself away. And when you have the electricity, you're not on the right time cycle. And we all know right now that our kids and everyone who are on computers are not in a good life cycle. And we've had disease spread, raising inflammation, migration. The great migrations led to urban areas. Again, in these urban areas, disease spreads more easily, as we saw with COVID. And so bringing it back to, okay, this is the last 300 years, and people are arguing really that we're in a 5th revolution right now because of the speed and the globalization. And geologists are flirting with naming this era the Anthropocene, which means this era was about humans and what we needed. And if you were to look in a million years, you would see, like, I'm not sure, maybe this much of rock to represent our time. So what do we do now? We go out and we seek the land. Ecopsychology was conceived during, again, the land environmental issue. We are all connected deeply, and ecopsychology studies have not been around because we usually consider ourselves in psychology as an I or a we, and something happening to me, and it's making me do this, and it's making psychosocial stressors. Well, we argue there are psychology stressors, and we're all living through this right now, and it's got an overall feeling of unease. So if you can get back out into nature, your brain can relax, you can see more of the land. And as in history, if you had a vista with a view, you were safe. If you were high on Mars, you were safe. That's how you kept safe from other people. And we don't have that anymore. We typically use nature as a third. There are several definitions. One is we embrace ecology in an aim to be holistic. And again, this is relatively new in the literature. It's described as creative therapy, perceives nature as a partner in the therapeutic process. As I was just saying, you and your client are out in nature. Nature is the third of your triad. And we do other things in triads, like we do art and triads. And that's you and your therapist looking at the same thing at the same time and using that for metaphors, for understanding. And when you are out doing ecotherapy, your boundaries can change with your client. So you really have to be careful that you don't get so relaxed that you forget this is about the client. I have a client that I'd been seeing for like 3 or 4 years, and we started to meet on the beach. And side by side, we watched the ocean, we watched the waves, we watched the dogs playing, we watched the surfers, and our conversations were different. Our boundaries were different. And I found it a little difficult at first because it became more personal in nature. And when you're doing this nature therapy, there's other variables. There's what if you run into somebody you know? What if they run into somebody they know? This is something you need to talk over with your client. In general, if it's someone you know, you just wave them away or say, hi, I'm with a friend, I'll catch up. And if it's someone that your patient knows, that's up to them, what they want to do. If they want to say they're in therapy, they can. And so that's just sitting and looking at the beach. Let's put some play into here. And why do we need to put play? Play is the true place to find psychological support. Attachments are formed in play, and then they're continued in play. We don't play that much as humans anymore. We did that a lot as kids, and kids have an intrinsic nature to play. Everybody does. As adults, you have to be intentional to play, and you have to decide what you're going to do to play. And it's not easy to find because we're all very isolated. And so there's a number of ways. And of course, in this lecture, we're talking about surf therapy. But I always have to put in my pickleball argument of this very interested community that is growing at a speed that nobody's seen before. They expect 30 million people to be playing it by 2030. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason. It's relational. You're on a court, there's 16 people near you. You can't help but to get to know people. And you also can't help to be just kind of relaxed because, I mean, listen, we're just hitting a wiffle ball. If you haven't heard of pickleball, look it up. There are other types. There's plants. We know about animal-assisted interventions, nature-based art and play, walking. Care farming is something that can really bring people together as they create an environment together and watch it grow. That's environmental conservation, also a great movement where you can join beach cleanups or participate actively or give money, but to invest in the environment in some way. And I think we all feel helpless right now of what's happening and the rapid changes. But, you know, humans are going to look to technology, and hopefully some of these problems will be less impactful. Green and blue space. I was showing you that the picture of the icebergs. These are very calming colors. Colors are used in marketing all the time. Red, for instance, makes you hungry. And that's why they put red in McDonald's. And then there's something called a blue plate special, which I don't know exactly what that is, but I think it was for an early bird. But the blue is an essential part of it, of the room and everything. Wilderness therapy and high intensity sports are a little different. These tend to be more active types of therapy that not everyone is going to want to do. In fact, going into the wilderness in a therapeutic sense is difficult, and it does work very well, and a lot of programs exist, but it's not really what I would consider something that would work for everyone. But when it works for that person, it works really well. And so high intensity sports, again, the kind of people you're going to see that need that are those people that have to jump out of planes to feel anything. They have to, climb highest mountains to feel as a person. She's moving me on here. Okay. The research is very limited, especially in conjunction with disease. Recently, there have been studies that have shown medical patients utilizing ecotherapy. Stanford did a study of walking in nature versus walking in an urban environment, and there was a true significant difference and recovery rate. Landscapes, what I was saying before, you're in awe. It's a vista. It's what we need as humans. It increases positive feelings. And high intensity sports also, again, these are for your thrill seekers that just can't calm down. If you say, hey, let's try this, they'll be all over it, and they'll get therapy that they need because it's more socially acceptable for that kind of person. When I speak about awe, I speak about awe a lot. Awe is when you look at something and your body, your mind can't envision it. You look up at the stars, you see your place, and it's beautiful, or you hear a symphony, or you meet a really interesting person. There are physiological effects. In the more intense things, we have adrenaline, euphoria, and dopamine. For instance, surfing has those three for sure. And then also being in nature boosts your cognitive capacity, your working memory. It strengthens your immune system and increases your vagal tone. The immune system is what we've been talking about, and having social support is very important to live with these diseases because they can be very isolating. And I think I'll turn it over to Natalie here. So we can zoom in on just one of these forms and the science behind it, and knowing that this is the form that we are presenting and we think is particularly helpful, and that's surf therapy, which is not just about surfing. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Natalie. I hope I gave you enough time.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Yeah, the ocean, well, surfing is just one way of accessing the ocean. And so the ocean itself has its healing components. And so Tracy's been touching on different ways of accessing nature, and from walking to even just recognizing that we are nature. I love that you brought in, Tracy, that people can provoke that experience of awe when we come in contact with someone else that is awe evoking, and how that impacts our emotional well-being. And so seawater itself is healing. You don't have to be in it in order to experience the healing benefits of it. You can simply be walking alongside of it, even just looking at a picture of it, or even just thinking about it. And so in 19th century England, doctors prescribed saltwater baths to help with a variety of ailments from depression to respiratory disease. And now there's also blue health research that is finding links between ocean interaction and the environment, climate, and health. And so this has been something that's been known since the 19th century and even before that. I've been spending the last 3 years living in Peru, and they have a surf history that goes back to 500 AD. And the fishermen today still practice that same surf culture and practice today. And talking with the local fishermen, they have within their lineage this knowing that if you have a cough or asthma or are having stress in your life, to just go and watch the ocean is medicine. And even I spent time in Morocco this last year as well, and they have salt rooms for people that don't have access to the ocean, just to go and be around salt water and the mental health and physical health benefits that come from that. And so throughout cultures around the world, there is this deep knowing that salt water is healing. And now we are starting to do the blue health research that is starting to uncover and recover why. And so some of the things that they've been discovering is that the high levels of magnesium in salt water helps release stress and maintains the health of our nervous systems. And I actually learned a fun little fact yesterday in a workshop with Embody Lab about our nervous system and how when we're in embryo, the amniotic fluid in the womb is the same salinity as the ocean, and there's this tube that starts developing within our little cellular beings at like 18 days that starts to close and hold in that amniotic fluid, that salt water, and that tube eventually becomes our nervous system. And so our nervous system is made of salt water. And that salt water is what allows us, that our nervous system is what allows us to experience this world. And also negative ions are released in moving water. And so that's the difference between like an ocean space with waves breaking and getting to be able to be in those waves, you're getting those negative ions. And the production of anti-inflammatory molecules is supportive through salt water. The entrainment with the sea, and so even just watching the ocean, you get that recalibration of our cardiac rhythm with the rhythm of the ocean and of those waves. Stephen Buckley shares that outdoor exercise, such as swimming in the sea, can be particularly beneficial, and some research suggests that it can be as effective as an antidepressant in treating moderate depression. We've actually had clients that have gone through our surf therapy sessions while also doing individual therapy, and their therapists have been able to start tapering them off their depression medications and anxiety medications. And so surfing is a high intensity sport, which causes the brain to release those positive endorphins and stress hormones, what Tracy was touching on. And so this endorphin release and stress hormone release, plus the health benefits of the ocean water, is powerful for well-being. And so these are just a beginning of the touch of what the ocean can provide for us, and research is continuing to go on and continuing to explore what is possible with this. And one of my favorite ocean pieces is, Tracy mentioned in a little bit earlier, how nature can feel inaccessible sometimes and can also provoke fear and anxiety, a sense of like, I don't belong here, it's overwhelming. And when we go into the ocean, that same experience can happen. You can have traumatic experiences in the ocean. People have experienced drowning, loss, getting held down. All those different things can happen in the ocean, but yet the ocean water is the same salinity as the amniotic fluid in the womb. And so there's this cellular memory in our being when we go into the ocean and being held in salt water from those first 9 months that we've experienced in amniotic fluid, salt water. That experience of being held, of being safe. Our cells remember that, even if our thinking brain remembers maybe a traumatic incident in the ocean, our cells have this memory of being home. And so when we go into salt water, there's this essence of being home. It also provides an opportunity for flow. And flow, there's a lot of different definitions of flow and a flow state. And the one that we're moving with today is that flow is the sense of fluidity between your body and mind, body, and where you are totally absorbed by and deeply focused on something beyond the point of distraction. This feels like time has just slowed down. Your senses are heightened. You are at one with the task at hand as actions and awarenesses sync to recreate an effortless momentum. So some people describe this feeling as being in the zone. We talk about it being in the blue mind zone. And this is that flow state that is accessible to everybody. Whether you are engaged in a physical activity, something creative, or even simply just day-to-day tasks, or surfing, or play, as Tracy was talking about, these can all evoke that flow state. And it's really being fully alive, fully present, fully engaged, where the past and the present and past and the future just are. You're not thinking about them, you're not worried about them, they're not taking up space in your mind, body, but rather you are fully present, alive, your senses are on, and you're soaking in that very moment. And so that's what the ocean does. It connects us with that present moment. And so I have a couple quotes from some of our surf sisters from some surf therapy programs just to kind of help bring it into that experience. And so this is a surf sister from 2017. Without me even trying, my stress, depression, trauma was left on the beach. When I was in the ocean catching waves, there wasn't time to think about all my problems on land. And so there's something happening there where just being in the ocean, all of a sudden, you're being brought into that present state, that flow state, and all of the other things that are taking up so much space in your mind's capacity on land, you get a break from them. And then another surf sister from 2019, for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about my grief, and it wasn't conscious, it just happened. Every wave evoked play, presence, focus, flow, and joy. It wasn't like my love one never passed, but it was like each wave was a permission to feel other feelings too. The past happened and I can't change it, but surf therapy taught me I can be present, alive, and feel all the emotions. Go for it, Trace. You're muted, Tracy.
Sorry, we are at break time. We were a little behind and we're wondering if 10 minutes works for you. If not, we'll stick with the original 15 without any problem because we have a question and answers at the end. So we're going on break right now. And if someone wants 15, write it in the chat. It'll be fine. I think they can come in because I think well, maybe
Put my sunglasses. Put my sunglasses.
don't walk behind me. If you are back, you could raise your hand. Not that hand. You know, the hand on the bottom of the Zoom. Yeah. Or that hand. Okay, looks. Dr. Jake, do we have you? Not yet.
Hey guys, great
Okay,
stuff.
okay.
I'm loving it. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Great. So we just had a quick body break. And so taking a moment now to check in with yourself. We've just been in this virtual space, workshop space, frontal lobe brain space of learning. And so taking a moment to check in. What is your body needing? Maybe you just get gifted at that to your body. Drank some water, moved around a little bit. I went and stuck my face outside to breathe some fresh air. Feel the crispiness. Are you feeling fully present right now? Are you feeling distracted, tired, alive? What are the things that are circling and getting stuck or flowing through your mind? Just kind of noticing where you are right now. There's no judgment. There's no like, oh, I need to be more present, or oh, I need to do it this differently, but just noticing for yourself after being in the Zoom space focused on a screen for the last hour and a half-ish. And so now I want to invite you to take a moment to think of your favorite ocean space. Putting yourself, if you need to close your eyes or look away from the screen, imagining yourself in that space. Maybe it's a familiar space that you go to often. Maybe it's a space that you dream of going to on your next vacation. And as you place your mind's eye in that space, notice what you smell. As you inhale in deep, maybe you can smell the saltiness of the air. Maybe there's barbecues going, dried seaweed. Noticing what you would hear there. Maybe the sounds of the waves crashing, birds, voices of people you love, wind, nothingness. And notice what you see in that space, the types of colors. Maybe they're bright and vibrant. Maybe they're dull and grays. What type of shapes, what type of trees, grass, seashells, rocks. Noticing the colors, the light and the shadows. And then swallowing and noticing what you taste there. Maybe there's a little bit of saltiness on your lips. And what does your skin feel in that beach space, in that ocean space? Maybe the temperature of both the sun and the breeze. Maybe there's stillness. Maybe there's lots of movement. And then noticing, what do you feel inside of you as you stand or sit or be in that ocean space? What does your body want to do? What parts of your body are activated? What parts of your body are still? What's moving through your mind in this space? Maybe it's full of curiosity, creativity, connection, wondering. And what's alive in your heart in this space as you let this ocean space fully soak into you? What's your heart whispering to you? And so now, noticing again, is there anything different just from thinking about your ocean space for this last minute in your body and your mind than 2 minutes ago when you were connecting in after being on Zoom for an hour and a half and having a little body break? Has anything shifted in you? What's the same? What's different? So this is a quote from Wallace J. Nichols in Blue Mind. And it says, neuroscientists and psychologists add that just being in, on, around, and under the ocean, or even just thinking about the ocean, can cause a wellspring of happiness and relaxation, sociality and romance, peace and freedom, play and creativity, learning and memory, innovation and insight, elation and nostalgia, confidence and solitude, wonder and awe, empathy and compassion, reverence and beauty. And it can help manage trauma, anxiety, sleep, autism, addiction, fitness, attention, focus, stress, grief, PTSD, and build personal resilience, and much, much more. So Shane, if you can go ahead and change the slide. One more time. There it is. So there's that quote one more time, and I'll read it again. And just notice as I read it one more time, what comes to mind for you as you were imagining yourself in your favorite ocean space. What of these words were starting to come in for you in that reality of just thinking about the ocean? And so neuroscientists and psychologists add that just being in, on, around, and under the ocean, or even just thinking about the ocean, can cause a wellspring of happiness and relaxation, sociality and romance, peace and freedom, play and creativity, learning and memory, innovation and insight, elation and nostalgia, confidence and solitude, wonder and awe, empathy and compassion, reverence and beauty, and help manage trauma, anxiety, sleep, autism, addiction, fitness, attention and focus, stress, grief, PTSD, and build personal resilience, and much, much more. And so that's from Wallace J. Nichols in his book, Blue Mind. And it's a brilliant book that goes through a lot of the different research and understandings of how being in, on, around, and under the ocean can impact our mental, physical, and social well-being. So go ahead and change the slide again. And so I'm Natalie Small. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of the nonprofit Groundswell Community Project, which and trauma-informed surf therapy model, Groundswell Surf Therapy. And so my background is using the arts for trauma recovery. And as a trainer with First Aid Arts, I have trained caretakers, therapists, and community supporters from the Philippines to Mexico and the United States on how to utilize the arts for trauma recovery when individuals and communities have experienced traumatic events, from everything like tsunamis to abductions and trafficking. The arts provides a gateway to express, explore, and heal and transform what is often unspeakable, the trauma. And surfing has been my own art expression for emotional regulation, grief, healing, and reconnection to myself, community, and this earth. And so in 2010, during an art therapy program, I introduced surfing as one of the art modalities. And within that program, recognized the huge impact that surfing and engaging with ocean and nature in that way provided for both the clients as well as for myself as a clinician. And in 2016, that grew into launching what is now Groundswell Surf Therapy. That's been providing trauma-informed surf therapy for intersectional communities of women around the world, from Scotland, Cuba, Peru, up and down the coast of California. And we are now providing training so that way more people can have access to the benefits, the mental, physical, emotional, and earth benefits of surf therapy. So one more change, thank you. And so with surf therapy, we work from trauma in general. Michelle's talked on trauma, Tracy's talked on trauma. Trauma is a big hot item these days. There's the big T and the little t trauma that is talked about all over social media and the movies and within friends. And it's exciting that there's becoming more attention and awareness around trauma. And with that, there's also this what is it actually? And so the word itself, trauma, comes from the Greek word for wound. And the definition of trauma from the DSM is an event or series of events experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful and or threatening that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's mental, physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And myself and Groundswell moved from the holistic somatic therapy model and understanding of trauma, and that trauma is not just an event itself, but rather is when our body experiences a disruption and overwhelm to our body, mind, body capacity to adapt, thrive, and flourish. And so trauma can occur when there's too much too soon, there's too much for too long, there's not enough for too long, when power and agency have been taken away from the person or collective, when the stressors outweigh the resources available to navigate them, and when our primal protective instincts, intuitions, and responses are thwarted. And this is like bringing it back to ecotherapy, when our community, our culture has taught us not to be nature anymore. And then finally, when there's not enough time, space, or permission to heal. And that's what we're getting to do with surf therapy, is provide the time, the space, and the permission to heal. And so trauma has robbed from us our human rights to feel and experience safety, power, control, and intimacy. I'm going to read through each of these again and give you an opportunity to kind of notice what comes alive in your body as I read each of them. So noticing which one activates what parts of the body, which one activates nothing, numbness, which feel tender, which feel good. So take a moment just to sit back, pulling your eyes away from the screen, maybe looking out your window or back to your nature item. And notice what comes in as you welcome in your right to safety into your body. Safety. What does safety feel like in your body? If your body was fully safe, what would it do? How would it be? Safety. And then power. What would power look like and feel like in your body? Welcoming that in, noticing power. Then trust. What would trust look like and feel like in your body if you really welcomed it in, knew it, trusted that you can trust? What parts of your body are activated? What parts of your body are like, ooh, I don't know about that? Resisted. And then control. What would it look like and feel like to have control within you and around you? Notice what parts of your body relax, what parts of your body want to take up space. And then intimacy. If your body, mind, body could really welcome in intimacy, what would that feel like? What would that look like? How would you move through the world? Intimacy. And so each one of these are your right to experience within your relationship to self, to others, and the world around you. And the goal of Groundswell Surf Therapy is to hold braver and safer spaces so you can reclaim each of these and thus reclaim your relationship to yourself, to others, and this earth. And that's where play and community and nature all come into play. And so Groundswell Surf Therapy is a trauma-informed therapy model that's rooted in community. And so trauma and wounding happens in community and can be radically healed within community. And so by doing this work within community, we offer opportunities to be seen, heard, and witnessed by others, while the experience of trauma often results in feelings of isolation, feeling silenced, erased, and not seen. And then we do this work within nature, the ocean specifically, which we touched on prior to the break, and the healing powers of just being in, on, around, under, thinking about the ocean. And then we have somatics. So Groundswell is rooted in somatic therapy, and that's welcoming the body back into the healing process. The Body Keeps the Score is a great book that really dives into the foundation of that shift from talk therapy into somatic therapy and welcoming the body back. And so oftentimes some like talk therapy, which can actually be difficult when doing trauma work, because the trauma, oftentimes when we experience a trauma in our bodies, the thinking brain goes offline. And so being able to communicate, to verbalize what happened isn't actually accessible, but the body can be. And so learning how to listen to the body, reconnect to the body, I love that Michelle brought in the interception, the ability of reading our bodies again. It was our first language, touch, the senses. And so reconnecting with that is what surf therapy is all about. And then play. Play, the importance of joy in the healing process. When something is joyful, it is sustainable. Oftentimes when people are going through therapy, it's hard, it's difficult. It's like after a session, you need time before coming back into community, into groups, into relationships, because it's heavy. And so to be able to come to therapy and leave with an experience of joy, even though, yes, paddling out is hard, had some gnarly wipeouts, you're like different things are starting to come up and surface because you're accessing your body and moving your body in different ways, you're still experiencing little moments of joy. And so one of our surf sisters in our very first, that shift from art therapy and having the surf be one of the art therapy modalities, shared, I surfed today and felt joy for the first time since I was a kid. My depression had become all of me. But today I felt this little moment of joy in the sea as I was laughing with my surf sisters, riding waves and wiping out. So this experience of joy is the first step in positive psychology theory of change. And so in positive psychology is the scientific study of optimal human functioning that aims to discover and promote the factors that allow individuals and communities to thrive. And Martin Siegelman is the founder of positive psychology. And so optimism is that first piece, feeling good right now. And so if you are experiencing depression, grief, anxiety, those feelings can take over all you are and feel like they're taking up all the space within you and there's no space for anything else. But when you catch that wave, or you even just feel your feet in the ocean and waves splashing up against your knees, there can be these little moments of joy that sneak in there. And that I can't remember the last time I felt joy, but when I was surfing, I felt it for a second. And so that's that first piece, having this little moment of like, oh, I just felt joy. I didn't think that was possible. And then the second step is strength. And so strengthening that, noticing that this joy, this goodness is actually within you. It's part of you. It's your capacity. You have the capacity to love, to find courage, to think about the future. You have virtues, you have joy. And so that's where we bring in like I am statements and use our body to connect and to share and to be seen and witnessed. And here's another quote from one of our surf sisters. I used to see my body as a sexual object, but today I felt my body as strong and capable. I never in 1,000 years imagined I could surf, but today I surf. Just imagine what else I'm capable of. So taking this one little moment and being able to connect it into like, ooh, what does this mean about me? Who am I really? What do I have the capacity to do? And then that final step of positive psychology is altruism. So recognizing you have something good within you and giving it out to the world. I have value in this world. It's important for me to be here. I have something to add. I have beauty to give this world. And one of the mantras that we use in our surf therapy programs is I make the world more beautiful. And that's honoring and knowing that each of us have something extremely important to give this world. And when we are struggling with depression, anxiety, grief, we can forget that we actually have value. Trauma devalues us, and surf therapy allows us to reclaim our value in this world. And so this slide that you're looking at right now is an example of our model of change, and noticing and looking at how somatics, group therapy, and nature all come together to create these big pieces of change. And so you can go ahead and change the slide. And so why surfing? Surfing creates so many different opportunities to connect to self. And so we have, let me see, make sure I'm in the right spot. Yeah. Okay. So surfing is a high intensity sport, which causes the brain to release positive endorphins and stress hormones. And so Tracy or Shane, are y'all there?
Yeah, I tried to do it and it just changed the slide. So I think Tracy did
Okay.
this.
And Gabrielle, I see your hand. You're saying that you can't hear anything. I'm hoping it's okay now.
Maybe leave the room and come back
Tracy, are you
in.
there?
Who's hearing me?
Tracy, I can hear you. Can you hit the record button?
It's still recording.